Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media.
Welcome, 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 welcome. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Well, welcome home, everybody. This is a very special edition of the Native Land Podcast because it is Martin Luther King Day. Nothing else important is happening today. All we care about is the dream that Dr. King once had that appears to be coming in the form of a nightmare on this very day. But I won't say what that nightmare is. I'll allow my co-hosts to do that. I'm Angela Rye. I'm here with Tiffany Cross and Andrew Gillum. You guys, what could possibly be ruining Dr. King's dream for America today?
Well, I just want to say, just for a quick second, I love that we came into Dr. King's words, free at last, because that is, and Angela is donned appropriately in her MLK gear today, because that really had such credo to Black folks. That is what we have. It is our birthright. It is what we arrived in this country seeking. You know, we were free beings who were kidnapped, raped, had the humanity beat out of us. And so for so long in this country, we have sought freedom. And so to hear those iconic words every year, I still get goosebumps. I remember when the Cosby Show did a special episode and they played those words. It means so much to me. So my honor and respect to the King family today, and your work and your sacrifice. Special shout out to Dr. Bernice King, yes, who stay woke and stay out there carrying on her father's legacy. It is striking, Angela. I'm heartbroken that inauguration is taking place on MLK Day because the Republican and conservative right-wing MAGA extremists are so skilled at co-opting his words and perverting them to promote ideas, ideals, and ideology that he did not stand for. They always cherry pick his language when really he has some pretty quote-unquote woke language out there and holds a lot of conservative white people to account, and they never play those. So I'm disgusted that inauguration is taking place today. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is the worst kind of oxymoron. Andrew, I'm eager to hear what our resident diplomat has to say about this horrific occasion on such a very special day. A day that we had to fight for, by the way. Even fight John McCain, who I probably would prefer being inaugurated at this point if he was alive.
You know what I appreciate about MLK Day, but Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement and struggle, the struggle toward our collective liberation. And it didn't start at the civil rights movement. It dates back, far back. And what I know is true about it is that the words, the hymns, the prayers prayed from then to now have always been aspirational. They've never been just about the moment that we're in. And I think for survival purposes, our ancestors had to project a brighter future, a day of freedom, a day when we could decide, a day when there'll be no more sorrow, no more pain. I just think about the songs and the hymns that carried us over, the speeches, the words, the poems that have carried us, have almost always spoken truth to what the moment is, and then tried to take us higher, tried to take us, lift us out of our grief into a higher plane. And so I'm acknowledging this day as another one of those days that while reality may feel bleak, while on one screen we might have the devil incarnate and his crew about to take the helm, we also still have the example of Dr. King, of our freedom fighters, of our movement leaders, of our ancestors to put our attention on something higher. And I'm clasping to that, y'all, because the right now can feel really defeated. The right now, this moment can feel like a letdown. It can feel like, golly, I thought we had made so much progress, and today feels like a complete and total throwback. And it does. Well, but I also know that progress is almost always followed by this kind of a reflexive reverberation. And then in a few years, be they 2, be they 4, we whiplash the next direction and all kinds of progress can be made. So I just think, for me, I'm making it by lifting up out of what's today and embracing what's today for the future.
Well, my neck hurts from whiplash, so hopefully we don't have to keep doing this. I'm curious.
The American struggle.
It is.
The Black American struggle.
Especially Black, and I just am tired. I would like to, if we can, speaking of Black Americans, go into something that we talk about often, and that's who all gonna be there. And so Andrew talking about a throwback.
Who over there?
Who talking about a throwback?
Who y'all got over there?
My argument is that you are our resident Barack Obama. And Tiffany is our resident Michelle Obama, not because y'all married, but because these are the 2 houses in which y'all sit. I feel like...
I don't think so.
Okay, well, let's see. Because I feel like you had the biggest argument for why Joe Biden should have invited Donald Trump into the White House, whereas the
Not should have.
What you mean?
That wasn't my argument.
Oh, what was it?
What was your argument?
I didn't have an argument about that period, to be quite honest. I know it came fiercely down, but I thought presidents have, for traditional purposes, done this symbolic after the election passing of the torch. We're leaving and you're coming in. Mm-hmm. And it didn't, to me, read as a complete and total collapse of I don't know, protocol. It's just, okay, well, that happened.
What I understood you to be saying, Andrew, so I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, is that yes, that is the people elected Donald Trump, and it is protocol for the president to invite him to the White House, and that should happen. That should not be disrupted just because we don't like the election results.
Well, fundamentally, I don't think they're different. I just said I would not make an argument, Joe Biden, you ought to invite such and such and such and such. I'm also not going to lay down on the train tracks over him having done so by keeping with tradition. We just ran a race about democracy, the need to not change our opinions on what's right based off of who gets elected.
But so do you think that people should go to inauguration?
No, I wouldn't encourage people to go
I'm sorry. I don't mean people like Gen Pop. I mean
Joe Biden.
Should the former president sit on that dais and watch him be sworn in?
I think former presidents can choose to do that in keeping with the tradition and the peaceful transfer of power of this country. I do not, however, believe that their wives, family members, or anybody else is obligated to the same. Michelle Obama never took an oath of office to the United States of America.
We haven't even got to Michelle yet.
We ain't even said that.
We haven't.
No, but I want us to.
I want to bifurcate. The reason why that's important to me is because we should have a bifurcation of. A bifurcation should exist between what are these traditions that are held because of constitutional purposes and then individuals who just make a choice.
Well, I don't know what the Constitution says about presidents being invited, former presidents being invited to the Oval, or especially when they're threats to democracy, or what it says about presidents having to attend inauguration. I've never seen that, but I guess what I'm curious about before we get to the wives.
Peaceful transfer of power. Yeah.
Okay, how do you peacefully transfer power to someone who you say is a threat to democracy?
By keeping with the traditions of the office that inure to the same, which is, you know what? We win this election. We competed. The election is now over. There is one president at one time, and that will be that.
So then another tradition is the vice president normally invites the incoming vice president to the Naval Observatory for a tour so they can see where they'll be residing before they take office. Kamala Harris did not do that.
Well, I think Kamala Harris presided
Vice President
constitutionally.
Kamala Harris.
Vice President Kamala Harris presided over the opening of the electoral votes and the counting of the electoral votes and the authentication process of the man who defeated her in the race for the presidency. As far as I'm concerned, she has held with the traditions of her office.
But that's not true, right? I think that she didn't. That is her constitutional responsibility.
That's exactly right.
I'm sorry. I didn't say anything about her presiding over the Senate.
But that's what I said because that's what I think is important.
I understand.
I don't care about the visit.
I understand. Okay, so that's what I'm curious about. I don't know why you don't care about that visit, but you do care about the other visit.
I didn't care about the other visit either. You did. Okay. I just happened to disagree with your conclusion.
Well, Andrew, I get the point that you're saying because you're. I think what you're saying is, I'm not advocating. I'm not out there like Joe Biden. You better invite Donald Trump. But the fact that he did, you're like, okay, that is tradition.
Consistent
That's
with the
what
customs
happens.
of the office.
So this gets to the heart of the conversation because. Yes, it is tradition. That is what happens. And what I think Angela and I are saying is, but he is a threat. He himself is a threat to democracy. I think the question that's more philosophical than it is political is that is how we feel. What happens when a Democrat gets elected and they say this Democrat is a threat to democracy? Not that any of us are mouthpieces for the party, but there were people who felt like President Obama was a threat to democracy.
Sure.
There were people who felt like President Biden was a threat to democracy. There are people who would have felt had Vice President Kamala Harris become president-elect that she would have been a threat to democracy. So in keeping with that, and I don't think these are, I think it is a false equivalency to talk about what Republicans and how they are a threat to democracy and Democrats. So I'm not trying to compare the two, but I think it gets to the heart of the question of how much do we want to play by the rules here in anticipation that one day the bowels of power will shift and the expectation that we have. Right, as they always do. I got to tell you, I'm like, throw the rules out. Right.
They might not shift.
That is the thing. People presuppose that this is just a normal time. Republicans in our office are going to be bad 4 years. And I'm saying ring the alarm. This is not normal. I say throw out the rules. That's what they did. They threw out the rules. They just decided this is not it. They treated it like the pixie dust it is. So my thought is, let's imagine this democracy as a blank slate. F your inauguration. I'm not going to, if I'm President Obama, I ain't about to sit at your inauguration on MLK Day. I want my daughters to know I stood up on this day and said, F that, I ain't there. If I'm Joe Biden, I'm not going there.
He could make that choice, by the way. Obama,
he won't.
I know he won't, but it'd be different to me if Obama, as in the first case, were transitioning the presidency from himself to Mr. Trump. Mm-hmm. He did. He showed up, as did Michelle. She was very much so not happy to be there. And we could all read that on her face and demeanor, right? But he, as far as I'm concerned, held to his part of the bargain. Trump and his loser-ass attitude didn't have what was required to do the same for his successor. And guys, the reason why, first of all, let me finish this point. So as far as I'm concerned, previous presidents who are not the current sitting office holder are free to do whatever it is they want to do. They are not a threat to democracy because they no longer attend the inaugurations of the party they disagree with. That's a fair choice. I came down, however, on the side of if you are the sitting president and you are transitioning between administrations, that we have to show that there can be some reconciliation here, because like your point. And I don't mean reconciliation like we all agree and we're holding hands and skipping and whatever down the stage, but this is what it sets us up for. If we can just decide we don't like the person and therefore we no longer have to respect any of the rules or guardrails, the same will happen to us, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. And I think what there is about this democracy that is defendable is that at the end of the day, we don't have to torch the country because we lost in a transaction of an election.
All right, Angela, because we got to take a break.
That's it. And I get that there is a sentiment to throw out all the rules, to buck into this and to say F you and let that message be resounding.
Angela, what do you say to that?
I find myself terrified of the consequences of that when it comes down on us.
I'm curious your thoughts, Angela, because that is an institutionalist. That's a traditionalist. What are your thoughts?
Yes, and I respect that's why I call Andrew often jokingly our resident diplomat, but he's always going to take the high road and do what is necessary to preserve the institution. I'm making the argument that by virtue of this man's election, the institutions are gone. I'm making go ahead.
No, I just wanted to correct myself and say I believe some institutions need to be leveled. So it's not protect the institution at all costs. It's not protect the institution because what we do is protect the institution.
They're about to be leveled. I just don't know if they're going to be leveled in the way that you would like. And I think...
Well, but my advocacy would be before, if there is a thing that needs to be taken away to be leveled, it ought to be leveled and put energy into that. But I'm not going to put energy into the things that to me are not on the whole important.
Okay, here's
consequential.
Here's my thought. I think that we have, and I'm saying I feel like I've been lied to. I feel like I've been betrayed. I feel like when people told me that there was sound evidence to support that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy and his election would mean the end of the thing that we know is imperfect, but that we are, since our ancestors were here, have been working to better, even when it didn't benefit us. If it is truly an end to democracy, I don't understand how you welcome that into your house. I don't understand how you welcome that into the bodies of government. I don't understand any of that. I don't understand how you clear the pathway for him not to serve time in prison. I don't understand how you have strong evidence to support a conviction for him and you don't work to ensure that that the day of justice or that justice is served. I don't understand that. What I think is the problem now is that there are a number of people who are watching Barack Obama at Jimmy Carter's funeral talking to Donald Trump nonstop, who are seeing that he's at the inauguration.
Skinning and grinning. Talking is one thing.
Who understand that Michelle Obama stood her ground and did not attend for another reason. Who understand that Kamala Harris, who was called trash by J.D. Vance, did not welcome her into her home until it's time for her to move out. I think that we are saying one thing, asking people to stand with us in saying that thing and doing something very different. And that is more dangerous than the threat that Donald Trump could ever be, because what happens is you lose credibility with people because you don't look honest. I feel lied to because everything that I've seen says that this man does not care about the rules. The fact that Elon Musk will have an office on the White House campus, the fact that tech companies writ large bought their way into Donald Trump's pockets by funding the inauguration, that Coke gave him the first commemorative inauguration bottle. Like the way that these companies left and right are throwing out DEI. We are not acknowledging the true threat he is if our leaders, the people we've elected, the people that we've campaigned for, the folks that our parents and everybody else has donated to are no longer saying the same thing. That is far more dangerous than any constitutional protection we could ever have. It is far more dangerous than any area of decorum thing that we could say is just the right thing to do. Damn that. I'm not welcoming the devil into my house. The Bible says resist the devil and he will flee from you. Then we got to resist this motherfucker.
Except that democracy isn't your house.
We're up against the break, so we're going to talk about it. I want to get on the other side. Well, on the other side of this break, I want to get into who's not going to be there, and that is Forever FLOTUS Michelle Obama. Yeah. And I want to remind our viewers how she feels about Donald Trump and why she might not be there. And I want to get back into more of what you had to say, Angela. So we'll see you on the other side of this break.
We will never benefit from the affirmative action of generational wealth. If we bankrupt a business or choke in a crisis, we don't get a second, third, or fourth chance. If things don't go our way, we don't have the luxury of whining or cheating others to get further ahead. No. We don't get to change the rules, so we always win. If we see a mountain in front of us, we don't expect there to be an escalator waiting to take us to the top. No. We put our heads down. We get to work. In America, we do something.
So those, of course, were the words of Forever FLOTUS Michelle Obama, who tossed the deuces to the inauguration today. She said, "Count me out. I ain't got time." I love that so many people have been sending around all these pictures of Michelle Obama talking about, if I send you this, I ain't coming. She is me. I am her. I 100% would not be there. And I think this is kind of the point Angela was making, because Angela, some of the things that you were talking about, in someone from across the aisle, someone could say those are policy differences, like DEI. You could say those are policy differences, not necessarily a threat. That is like the baseline of how they're threatening us. The more scary thing, I think, is what you talked about the tech companies and what they touch and how they have bought their way into this administration, which, quite frankly, we have not dug into deep enough. And I don't mean we, native land. I mean we, the country, we, the constituents of America, have not examined that very dangerous relationship. The threat that we are on the global stage with all of these people who are inept leading these agencies. So I think you have raised a really good point about normalizing this. When we see people normalize, when you are engaging with this man who questioned your very citizenship, who said that you were born in Kenya, who disrespected
your education.
Ain't no kiki after that. And you know what it reminds me of? I'll tell y'all, which all of us can appreciate. In the green room on some of these cable news hits, okay, there are people who are MAGA extremists, Trump apologists, and they're on with people who, are Democratic exposed people on the left. And in the green room, they all kikiing and ha-haing and, oh, did you? You and your family went here, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to tell you, I ain't never did that shit in my life. I wasn't ever out there performing. I wasn't playing no character. Ain't no kiki. I don't give a damn what you and your family did over the weekend. I'm not talking to you about it. We can talk about policy when we get on air. You're not my friend. I'm not trying to reach across the aisle. You're not my good, distinguished person. And sometimes I think those performative antics do more harm to our democracy by pretending the thing that we see, the clear and present danger that is before us, is not a clear and present danger. And the quiet truth that should be a loud truth is Donald Trump is an existential threat to not only America, but our lives as American citizens, as Black people, and our livelihoods as people of this country. So I just disagree with the politeness.
I don't think so. Your example of not sitting in the green room kicking, I've never done that either. It's not my style.
I don't think any of us have.
No, I just want to be clear about the difference. I don't, and I don't in Florida with wishing people happy birthdays who don't believe in my existence and all that. That is performative.
Yeah.
I have no obligation to that. I don't think many people don't have an obligation. Michelle Obama has never taken an oath of office to the country, not as first lady and not in any way prior to that. Then I'm not saying that to say she didn't love the country and is fighting tooth and nail to protect it for herself and for her daughters and their progeny, all that. But she doesn't have an obligation in regards to the levers of power in the exchange of that. All good.
She ain't never been for the games. Can I just real quickly, Andrew?
She's not for the games. I love that about her. And I love that she gets to show her protest in this way. I wish her husband had joined her to add even greater weight to that, because I don't think he himself is consequential to this passage of power. I do think that the current president and administration are. The fact that the vice president didn't invite Vance and his wife is of zero import. Number one, he has no job responsibility except to wait for the president to die. And that he gives him. Yeah, they have no constitutional obligations.
Well, it depends on what the
other
president appoints you.
But there is no constitutional obligation to any duty other than to stand in the absence of the president.
Yeah.
So
and preside over the Senate. Right.
Yeah,
but you're off the hook as far as I'm concerned. I don't really care.
Not if it's tradition. So
she held her. Are we mad at her because she presided over the counting of the electoral votes?
I wish that she would have been more contentious about it, sure. But no, I'm not mad at her for doing what was her obligation. I think there's a difference between obligation and decorum, though.
We both signaled that. The difference, which is I give a damn about a tea at the House. I didn't give a damn about a tea at the House the first time either with Vice President, with Biden. What I care about is that we don't get to throw out the guardrails simply because we lost. I remember when
it's not that we lost. I want to make sure that we're really clear about the fact that this isn't. And George W. Bush felt like an existential crisis too, right? George W. Bush. Isn't.
That was the example I was about to go to.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It felt like that. But this is very
and undemocratic.
This is still very, that was awful. And this is still very different. If we listen to the campaign ads that were run, if we listen to the rhetoric of every talking head, every spokesperson, every surrogate for the campaign, if we listen to the vice president herself in the debates, if we listen to Joe Biden talking about this man in 2020 when he ran against Donald Trump, this is very different. Or all of that was a lie. And so we have to come to terms with the fact that either he is a threat to democracy and we treat him the same way we would treat any other world leader that is a threat to democracy, or he's not. But we can't have it both ways.
Well, so first of all, I don't disagree with you, which is why I think people have to be really careful about rhetoric.
Yeah.
You have to be very careful about the words that come out your mouth and how you assign them to other people.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, if he is going to assume all of the levers of power, it does us no good to go underground and pretend that he won't be making these decisions, he and his administration, for the next 4 years that impact us.
I'm not suggesting that either.
No, I get it, but where, to what end? He's a threat to democracy to then what end?
I think that, Andrew, Here's the part where I'm going to just say, this is where I feel like Republicans have balls. I think they have balls on the wrong things. I think their balls are false, but here's where I think they have balls. I think that if the roles were reversed and they really thought that this person that was elected that beat their team was a threat to democracy, there would be more of a protest. I'm not suggesting a January 6th was going to be my next point. But what I'm saying is there is a difference between tearing up your own house and saying, these are the ways in which I won't engage with you because you are a threat to everything I stand for. And I just think that we say that with rhetoric. We say that at rallies. We say that in debates. But when it comes time for a leader to have passed away, to pass the baton, we'd be like, good job, man. It's not an NBA playoff game. This ain't the finals. Like, this is not just like the better team won. That's not what this is. It's very different. We are going into a war for our livelihood. We know, from the last administration what's at stake. You were a target. This is not somebody who you welcome into your space and say, now how can I make this transition easier for you? That. No.
So my question, I guess, back to the two of you is, when the election is over and the new administration is sworn into office, is the argument then to people to not engage in any way?
That's the question. No, I don't think he's saying that's what you're saying, Angela. But that is a question to talk about because, and that's legitimate because that's what happened the first time around. He was inviting Steve Harvey for some dumb reason to talk about policy. Like, I hope that people don't let their hubris lead them into an office that they don't belong. But that is the question. If you're there to advocate, if you're there to fight, do you show up to the meeting? Do you meet with his sycophants? Do you meet with his cabinet members to try to, sway them to your side, knowing that it probably won't happen? I don't have the answer to that question, Andrew. My immediate thought, without giving it its due consideration, is no. Because I don't think that you can squeeze justice from this turnip. I don't think that these are people who are good actors. I don't think that they are acting in good faith. So I would say no. But what do you say? Do you disagree?
Well, we talked before about, for instance, the common cause that might exist on some level of policy around the Justice Department, accountability, being, there were some things that I think, while they may have arrived at their position for the wrong reasons, we know them to be costly and devastating and life disruptive, if not ending, for our communities.
Yeah.
And so if the window exists for us to level that part of the system, do we walk through that door or not? I don't believe that you participate in stagecraft. I don't believe that I don't think you willingly and ignorantly go into being a prop. It's why I refused to do a post meeting after I lost. We're not sitting down to talk about my agenda and what advice I have. I've never been governor. I can't give you advice on what that looks like. And you rejected my agenda during the course of this race. There's no progress to be had there. No, I'm not going to sit down with you and be the useful idiot.
If he says, I want to talk to you about a black agenda, would you sit down and talk to him?
So here's the thing.
Not without preconditions.
Yeah. And I think that's the important part. What we know about Donald Trump from the last administration, and sadly, that's all I have to go on, is he loves to have the conversations for the photo op. I'll never forget that meeting with all those HBCU presidents piled into the Oval Office looking like sardines. It was humiliating.
Yes.
So I think for me, what I would have to acknowledge is I'm not likely a voice that he can hear from. I am not opposed, as you guys know, to being behind the scenes, figuring out who those spokespeople are. Somebody who wasn't as critical of his agenda, somebody who he thinks might be a friend, but they're actually going to be a Frederick Douglass to an Abraham Lincoln kind of maybe there's that. I'm definitely not opposed to figuring out how we get our stuff across the finish line, because I'll be honest with you, I am so disappointed by the Biden administration and the last and final days and how our stuff wasn't handled. So if there's an opening in the Trump administration, by all means, let's strategize. That does not mean that I want to go to Mar-a-Lago, kiki, and roast s'mores with your ass. I'm not doing that. So I think it's different. And I do like that stretch of like, well, what would it take for us to get there? Who are those players? Who are those people? What's on the agenda? Our agenda ain't changed since 1972 and arguably since 1864. You know, like it has been the same, and it is freedom, and we are still striving for it. It is not here, and it is not lasting. It is but for a moment, and it is far too fleeting. We have an agenda that we need to get accomplished. That is Black liberation at all costs. The CBC says no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, just permanent interests. We got to see if we can ride that thing out. But right now I'm hot as hell, and I probably should not be the person y'all sending to the Oval. I'm just saying.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break. On the other side of this, I want to talk about protest, because what is also happening today, there are protests across the city. What you will not see is a lot of Black people at this protest. So we should get into that on the other side of the break. It'll give Angela a chance to cool down because she hot.
I'm cool.
All right, we're back. So the first pussy hat I see, I'm rolling my eyes at it. Like, y'all got it.
If it wasn't assault, I'd smack it off.
Right. I don't care about it. I'm not protesting on this day. I am enjoying time with our community, with Michael Harriet.
Dream about the dream.
Yes, exactly. But I think this kind of goes to what you were saying, Angela, about engaging. Like, you're still in the fight. You're willing to sit down with them and figure out strategically what it is. I have to say, I'm probably to the left of you on that. I don't want to even do that. I don't want to sit across from these people. I think people like you probably should, but
I said I should not go. I said I would send the people in.
But behind the scenes, like you can behind the scenes try to advance something. I just don't trust these people. I don't think that I don't know what areas we could find common ground on and work on something. I think I'd rather put all my energy and effort into protecting the community. Because, that's where the most harm comes, unfortunately.
Well, what about on the FBI? We talked about that before. If they're talking about getting, and this was Andrew's point, I think earlier on, there are some institutions that should be leveled because they've never served us.
So, but I think I'm very clear when they talk about leveling the FBI. Kash Patel is not talking about we got to crush operations like COINTELPRO, and we can't do that. He's talking about how can we weaponize these institutions to serve our king, Donald Trump. We don't have a president, ladies and gentlemen. We have a king. And that is what we are looking at in this landscape. I don't want to participate in it. And I don't know how to do that and protect our people at the same time, but I'm sure as hell going to try to figure it out.
I think there's a lot of crossover between harm, protecting our people, which basically equals harm reduction.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't advance. Like, I don't expect you to make me the millionaire, but I expect you not to drag me back, not to drag me backwards. Now, I don't know that I have to trust these people or their motivations for why they want to do a thing. Because I think I can say pretty clearly from Jump Street that they're going to be self-motivated at every turn. That if we can just walk into the room anticipating that whatever they do, whatever we walk away with is going to be to their advantage more than it's going to be to mine. Their reasons for getting here are going to be different than the reasons I have for getting here. But if it still takes aim at that same motherfucking policy that got us here, then let's take aim at it and blow it away.
Well, where do you stand on protests? Like, I feel like Black people have done so much. I don't know how I can, like, does our protest still look like marching? Are we, circulating petitions? Are we showing up? Are we being disruptive? Are we, I don't know.
I think it depends on the stakes. I definitely don't think I don't think it's a strategy we rule out. I do think it depends on the stakes of the fight at the time. But I also think, just like our civil rights leader, which we should take lessons from today, that we had a Malcolm and a Martin who the world experienced as being completely separate, disconnected movements, embodiments represented as, one, a peace-loving, God-fearing, leader of the army, and the other being radical, untraditional, willing to go to the hilt for our people. And they both, I don't think any one of us would say there wasn't equal relevance and import from both if we were to look at it that way.
They were both, I think, God-loving and peace-loving. I think.
That's what again, I don't think the lines are as I have just described.
Yeah.
I think that is the superficial
perception
observation of like what that was. But I agree. None of that to me is the truth of the matter. But what I know is the truth of the matter is that, just as Angela acknowledged, I may not be the person to send into that room. But we should think together about who that right is, so that when after that meeting I go on TV and blast them, that they understand from whence I come, my blasting is necessary to give them greater leverage in the room toward the negotiated end that we're fighting for. And I still think that Black people know this lesson, and I don't think we should ever betray this lesson, that advances are to be made, and we all got roles to play in how we get there. Some of us going to throw the bombs from outside. Others are going to set the trap inside. And still others are going to drag us over the finish line in other ways. So
Angela,
I just think we are dexterous, and we got to show that dexterity now.
I agree with that.
I want to switch gears slightly to the pomp and circumstance of it all, because I remember in 2016, we had strong feelings about people who chose to perform at Donald Trump's inauguration. Recently, Whoopi Goldberg had this to say about Carrie Underwood performing.
People do what they do for whatever reasons. It's like Joe and Mika. They did what they did. They felt that's what they needed to do, and I got to stand behind them.
Yeah.
And I stand behind her no, not or not, because if I believe I have the right to make up my mind to go perform someplace, I believe they have the same right.
Of course.
And so
That's
I have
true.
to, I have to support. Doesn't mean I'm particularly interested in what I won't be watching, but that's me.
But I'm just curious, because last time there was such blowback, especially for Black performers. It was Chrisette Michele. I ain't listening to Chrisette Michele no more. It was Travis Green. Travis Green came back and apologized. Gospel singer. So I'm just curious to know, has the temperature changed there? Or now we seeing this as a strategy move? No?
I honestly, I think Whoopi Goldberg probably would have felt that same way about Chrisette Michele. And I'm glad that we heard the exact clip, because I actually agree with Whoopi now that I've heard what she said. I don't expect anything from Carrie Underwood. Yeah. I remember the little bit that she did on Obamacare with Brad Paisley. I think it was at the CMAs or somewhere, wherever it took place. Well, so this is behavior I'd expect from her. I do expect better from Black people. I did expect better from Chrisette Michele. I did expect better from Steve Harvey. I did expect better from people who were so eager to drink from the white man's cup that they scurried their asses over there to do something, to tap dance for them, all of it. And we hold ourselves to a higher standard, because we we have firsthand experience with how damaging and harmful the system can be. So when you go and perform for the face of this system that is taking this system even further back, even further to the right, even more oppressive, even more draconian, then I do have to wonder, what is your intention? So I agree with Whoopi. If she want to perform, who gives a damn? I can't name 3 Carrie Underwood songs. Don't really care about her and people who listen to her. I imagine it's going to be a lot of other performers performing too. But if Lil Wayne showed up, I'm like, I ain't messing with Lil Wayne. Like, that's an embarrassment. And he was kind of out. That's why I wasn't on that Super Bowl conversation. Because I'm like, he was out here real MAGA for a minute. Y'all don't want to invite him to perform at the Super Bowl? I don't care. I got plenty of other people I can support other than anybody who was supporting this president.
Well, the reason why he couldn't perform at the Super Bowl, he was sounding real crazy in his last couple of performances. So even if it wasn't MAGA-ish, it was because the quality of performance has gone down.
I'm just saying, karma is a. But the truth is that for these folks who make their living off of our buying into what it is they do, what it is they're selling, how it is or whatever, these choices have consequences.
Right.
In both ways, right? Regardless of which side wins, these choices have consequences. And I can every day vote with my wallet on whether I'm going to be a consumer, continue to patronize you, or what. But I have the same stance that y'all have as it relates to the folks who went to the first Trump thing. And not just that, but on a whole range of issues. When you show up on the opposite side of where I am on issues that are consequential to my life existence, we going to have problems.
Yeah.
And you might not know me from Tom Adam Cat, but just know none of my money is coming to you.
Nothing I tell y'all
is going to inure to your benefit.
Y'all were talking about going to these meetings. I just want to just do another throwback because I love our Forever FLOTUS. Michelle Obama in 2009 was invited. This was something around inauguration. It was like the spouses brunch
the
or
lunch
something.
After the inauguration, the Senate lunch.
Yes. That's what, thank you. She was seated next to then, I think, House Speaker John Boehner.
Leader
John Boehner.
He was the speaker?
He was speaker. I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about Mitch McConnell initially.
No. This was House Speaker, Republican John Boehner from Ohio. We're going to roll this clip. There's no sound for those of you who are listening and not watching. But those of you who are watching, you can see that.
You're going to get play-by-play from Tiffany.
Yes. When I tell you, she ain't got no time for it. Whatever this man was saying, he could have been saying these are the winning lottery numbers. She got eye roll after eye roll. She eating her food. She ain't giving him no eye contact. She's barely looking her way. And you can tell how disgusted she was that she's supposed to sit there and pretend that this man wasn't part of a machine that was calling her husband, not saying he was not an American. Who was questioning his qualifications, who was questioning his integrity, who had accused them of doing a terrorist fist bump, who had talked about her physically, who had talked about her personality, talked about everything she said. She wasn't about to be there and perform that pageantry. She was terrorized. So she's sitting there, everything about her body language said, you from the south side of Chicago to my spirit, from Whitney Young High School to the Wild Hundreds. I'm telling you, double middle finger to you. I ain't got it for you. And I have to say, in that time, I remember some people, even in our community, being critical, like, oh, she could have been nicer, blah, blah, blah. No. At that time, she was doing the right thing. This time, she's doing the right thing.
I respect
I'm not even going.
I agree. I respect that and agree.
I know that, but RJ would not.
Of course not. And if she did, you see it all over her very being. In fact, it would be a hard thing for me to ask her to join me at X thing. You know what I mean? Like, I may have an obligation or perceived obligation. I don't want anyone to think that I don't get what it means to send nonverbal signals to people. That by your presence, by your existence, you are connoting something to the people who are looking. Right?
They're these lobbyists.
You're sending.
And corporate movements who are having like these welcome inauguration parties, and people are like, oh, I have to go. It's for my job. I don't want to, but I work for Coke. I work for this company, or this is a law firm.
I can't speak to none of that. But I do know as it relates to obligation, there are things that I understand to be obligatory, and I by and large will defend those things. And then there are the things that are just your choice, that are like, okay, you know what? I could have done this or not done this, and it wouldn't have been a world of difference to the consequences of the exchange of power. But then there are the choices that you can make that show as real protests. And what Michelle Obama has given us is, I think, a real, and by the way, we've assigned meaning to this because her statement ain't say nothing about what she doing and why she ain't going. But I have to read from it. Exactly. All of us can read from it.
What we say, Andrew, what's understood need not be
said. It need not be stated, right? She ain't got to say a damn thing. We know exactly what's going on. We need that too. That somebody's reminding us that this shit ain't right.
Yeah.
And I think she has sent and will continue to send powerful reverberations by her not being there. And I embrace it. And I, as I said before, wish her husband would join her.
It's MLK. Inauguration
is over.
DNA. He's officially the president. Angela, what is keeping you up at night now that this man is officially the president? For those listening, Angela just let out a deep sigh.
Because my blood pressure's high. I'm trying to keep my blood pressure low. I'm serious. I literally got to take it every day. I think their pledge to go after its political enemies. Mm-hmm. I think the super litigious nature of those who Trump has rehired into the administration, the things that they will litigate, that historically people would just kind of let go, the settlements that we've already seen happen from media companies. The fact that there's such a severe double standard and what that says to our children. What the ways in which crafty and intelligent world leaders will take advantage of this administration. I think the real lack of separation. We used to talk about the separation between church and state. Now there's no separation between corporate and state. And I think that the blending of, how you get to power is through money and privilege is really a very dangerous precedent. So there's so much.
Well, what would you, as we're officially in this administration now, what would you guys like us to focus on the podcast? Because there's going to be so much happening all the time. So should we, how do we go forward in terms of what we do here? I don't want to talk about Donald Trump all the time. Yeah. It's going to be hard not to. But I would like us to offer something else to people other than what this administration is doing. How do we strike that balance? Or do you all think we need to?
Well, I thought your question was going in the direction of, if we have to cover them, what pieces of it are we trying to track?
And what else should we be covering?
1,000% that we should be across the range, just showing, fine, we can't look at the national model as a true example of representative democracy, but let's look here at the state of Maryland. And let's assess that if we had our Wakanda, what would this look like? And then what decisions might flow from it? Let's highlight some of that. So I'm with you. We talked about that before, and I think that those are really important bright spots that must be held up for us at this time. But I also think we have to be ever vigilant that while we were sleeping, that we didn't lose something very important, critical, fundamental to our existence now and the future because we were asleep. And so watching him and covering them is not about following Trump. Watching them and covering them is going to be about the threat or opportunity it presents to our community.
Protecting.
For me.
Yeah, we have to. And that's the thing. I hope that we can center more. And Andrew, you hit on this earlier today, center more on what it means to protect us and advance our causes. And so if this podcast can be a part of an organizing body, I'm here for it. I never wanted to do media for media's sake. It was always for the advancement and liberation of Black people. And so to the extent that we can use this platform, utilize the gifts and talents that God gave us to do that, I am down. So we can do coverage for oversight, but we also need to do coverage for strategy and moving bodies.
Absolutely.
So I would like to see that. Even though Tiff was asking the audience, consider me part of the audience in the Native Land Pod fam.
No, I was asking you.
Okay.
But that's a good point. That's a good point. We should ask the audience, what do you guys want to hear from now that we're officially in this administration? What do you guys want to hear from us? What role do you want to play in the podcast? We have a very open table, so we invite your comments, your questions, your videos.
Even when y'all get mad.
Even we play y'all videos and y'all get mad. I read your YouTube comments, whatever, the good, bad, and the ugly. I see it all. Because this is community, and we hold each other to a higher account than I think we do.
But Tiff, you didn't answer the question though yet either. You just say you don't want to talk about him all the time. Just
what would I like to see us cover?
Yeah.
Oh, I would like us to see what's below the fold. Not what's above the fold on A1, but what's on F3 below the fold. And I think I have.
Is that the classifieds?
Right.
No, them jobs, girl.
I care about criminal justice. I care about I want our people who are behind bars to know they're not forgotten. For the past few weeks, I'll tell you guys, we had that gentleman who's a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated ask a question about disability. So for the past few weeks, I have been looking into that. So stay tuned because I will come back and talk about the intersection of people of color, Black people and disability and policies around that. So that's something that I'll be talking about. Of course, I have a lens of foreign policy and how we show up on the globe. I just don't want to get caught up in the outrage every week. Donald Trump said this and his cabinet member said this and this exchange happened on Capitol Hill. I'd like to have deeper, more philosophical discussions around what some of these things mean and keep in mind our people to give our people something to believe in again, because it's so easy to check out. But we have to remind people, hey, this country for 8 years was an amazing place to be, even though we had a lot of challenges. But we can do that again and do it better this time. So we'll see. I mean, I know sometimes it's going to be hard not to talk about the shiny object. It's going to be hard not to address the disrespect or the insult or the fist fight that happens on Capitol Hill, which I am predicting is going to happen. I'm predicting because they getting real froggy, and at some point somebody going to leap. We got to brace.
I love it. But Tiff, to the extent that we are talking about the what's above the fold, we're going to talk about it through a lens that centers our experience and how it is going to impact us. So that doesn't worry me because I think we've had an exhibited example of trying to show, look, this isn't going to be the generic talk you're getting on Emmett and nah, and that.
Yeah.
This is going to be, all right, well, how's this landing with us? Because we're rarely ever considered in this conversation.
Right. Well, I want to just say one tiny little thing. And that is that I have always had an eye or tried to be true and authentic and live in service to community, which is why it's a pleasure to do this with both you guys because we all have that in common. And trying to gain favor, or secure things outside of that has never been my intention. And, people come and go. But I think what people know about all of us here is we have never tried to appease the people who come and go. The corporate structure can like you today and hate you tomorrow. But we have stayed true to our community. And I just want to take this moment of the hundreds, it felt like thousands, maybe it was thousands, but the thousands of people who this past week, I should say, have reached out, tweeted, posted, tagged, DM'd, all of it. I have seen your comments and I just appreciate you all for acknowledging the work that we do here on Native land and how I've always tried to show up for a community despite who was in what position of power. So I thank you all for riding with me.
Happy MLK, everybody.
We still have a dream.
We do have a dream.
Yes. And we working for freedom.
Always.
Pursuit of.
All power to the people. Welcome home, y'all.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.